Well, the Miami Dolphins lost yesterday in absolutely embarrassing fashion. And on this morning's episode of Dolphins Today by Chat Sports, we're going to overreact to some of the events that transpired yesterday afternoon. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. But before we get into my Week 8 overreactions, the season may very well be over with a 2-5 record, and this team just can't get out of its own way. And there's really no way that we can be positive about them moving forward. But let me know, are you done with this season? Type Y for yes, type N for no. If I'm going to be honest, if I could push a button to my side right now that said I get to go in hibernation and then wake up in mid-January after Week 18, I probably would push it. All right, let's get into the first overreaction. And this was kind of one on last week's show that the Dolphins need to fire Chris Grier. I just want to hammer this point home once again. It is 4 fins, which means it absolutely should happen. It's likely, whatever you want to say, is the biggest lock of all time. Chris Grier needs to be fired. He cannot come back next season. If he comes back next season, I might go on a season-long boycott because there is no possible way that you can justify Chris Grier being the general manager of this football team for another season. And I understand that you've made the playoffs in back-to-back years. He made the trade for for Tyreek Hill, drafted Jalen Waddle, drafted Tua. He has had some decent moments. But the way that this team has been constructed this season, I'm sick of it. They don't win big games. They never come through in the biggest moments. And this has nothing to do really with what has transpired this season with losses at home against the Cardinals, Titans, and in Indianapolis. And the sad part is, if you just win those 3 games, because I believe you should have won those games, you'd be sitting at 5-2 rather than 2-5, especially the ones at home against Arizona and Tennessee. And even if you just do those 2 games, well, guess what? You're going to be 4-3. So to me, even though that this season maybe hasn't had the big loss, the collapse late down the stretch like you saw over the past 2 years, the roster construction of this team has just been bad. In some of the small moves, like signing Jordan Poyer, which I wasn't here on the channel at the time that they signed him, and they let Deshaun Elliott walk and Brandon Jones, and so I didn't really have my opinion publicized when that move was happen. It happened last March and April. But it's just been bad moves, and everything he's done has just not worked out, at least this season. The only move that you can really say that he has 1,000% hit on in the past calendar year is signing Calais Campbell to a veteran minimum contract, because he's been your best defensive lineman all year long. The Odell Beckham Jr. signing has been an absolute whiff to this point. It just has not been good, and with the cap situation of Miami, I would borderline like to see it get torn down, at least in some capacity, and I don't think Chris Grier should be the one to try to build it back up. He's been here since 2016. He's had his chance. No playoff wins in the last 24 years. I don't care that they've made it in back-to-back seasons. It's not going to be 3 straight years in all likelihood, and he needs to go. And Mike McDaniel likely will stay after 2 good seasons, and he's got a contract extension through 2028 before the season began this year. But to me, it's time for little old Chris Grier to hit the road. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because even though the Dolphins are 2-5 and the season is looking quite bleak at this point, we are still going to bring daily videos, sometimes 2 videos a day. Like today, for example. We'll have another video later this afternoon. Hit that sub button and join the channel, because we are not going anywhere. Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator of Miami, did he blow this game? I'm giving it 2 fins. It's not a small shred of truth, but people are talking. That's 2 fins, because I think Anthony Weaver deserves some blame for this loss. The defense has been outstanding all year long. Number 1 team against the pass coming into this week. You give up over 300 yards through the air. Things are going to be questioned. And yes, the Dolphins' defense was horrific, giving up 21 points in the second half, as they did lead 13-7 at the break. I know 2 of them was a safety because of a bad snap, fumble from Tua, Aaron Brewer, whatever you want to call it, in their own end zone. But you got to blame some of the players. I think Anthony Weaver deserves some of the blame, but these players got to make plays. And the annoying thing about this game is that the Dolphins' biggest weakness coming into this week defensively was without a question their run game. They are terrible against the run. They were a bottom 10 team in football defending the run. This game, they did really well. On the entire game, they only averaged 3.2 yards per carry, but they got torched through the air. And a lot of that can be talked about the pass rush, which we're going to bring up in just a second, which is why I can't really blame Anthony Weaver completely, at least to this point. blame could be coming in the future once we get more numbers in terms of how many times they blitzed, the play calling. Once those come out in the morning and I get my hands on them, well, then maybe we could have a conversation about that. But not being able to generate any pressure by only bringing 4 people is where this Dolphins defense really struggles. We're going to talk about that more in just a second. But we are sponsored by Game Time. Game Time, they do not struggle because they get you the lowest price guaranteed, and they specialize in last-minute tickets, whether you're going to a comedy show, concert, live sporting event. Maybe you're done with the Dolphins. Well, if you live in Miami, you can go watch the Heat play because at least they're a competent organization. You can also go to any event in your local area, even if you're not in Miami. They have a great new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. A couple other features I really like, all-in pricing, shows you the exact price of your ticket up front rather than getting blindsided by fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. Doesn't matter what the venue is. If it is a sporting event or if it is a comedy center or a arena, they will show you where you are sitting and what your vantage point will be, which is why I love Game Time. I got my tickets for week 1 of college football, LSU USC. My tickets when I went to game 4 and 5 of the NLCS or Dodgers Mets with Game Time. I get my tickets with Game Time every single time I go to a live event. I implore you guys to do the same. Download the app and create an account. Use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. First purchase only, but code CHATSPORTS when you download the app and create an account. What time is it? It's game time. All right, when we talk about really what's wrong with the Dolphins defense, these players and these faces are the ones that you have to blame. Emmanuel Ogbah, Chop Robinson, Tyus Bowser, Quentin Bell, David Long Jr. Thought Jordan Brooks played a pretty solid game, but he is also going to be on this list. And I don't want to be harsh, but I'm going to be harsh. These bums lost you the football game. You did not generate anything on Kyler Murray. He was sacked, you know how many times, folks? 0. 0 times. Sure, you got some pressures, but you couldn't bring him down. Jordan Brooks came in on a free running screecher on Kyler Murray in this game. Whiffed. Kyler Murray scrambled outside the pocket, made something happen with his legs, and found a guy downfield. Jalen Ramsey in the red zone came off a corner blitz, untouched. Missed. Kyler Murray scrambles out of it. Touchdown pass in the first half. It was their only touchdown of the half. And there was just too many instances where if they either got pressure and they couldn't bring him down, or they got absolutely no pressure and Kyler Murray was freaking having a picnic back there dissecting the defense. I don't care how good the secondary has been all year. If you're asking them to defend for 5+ seconds because you can't get home with 4 people, 5 people, and Kyler Murray's razzling and dazzling and sitting back in the pocket, you're not going to be able to hold up in coverage. And that was the issue on most of these plays. No pressure is absolutely abysmal. No sacks. Chop Robinson missed a play as well. Like, Kyler Murray killed you, man. And some of it can be blamed on Anthony Weaver. Some of it needs to be put on the players. Like, it's not Anthony Weaver's fault that on 3rd and 4, with a minute and a half to go in this game, where if you make a tackle short of the sticks, you force the Cardinals to kick a field goal with a minute 15, and then they ultimately give Tua in the offense a full minute to potentially go on the field and get Jason Sanders in the range. It's not Anthony Weaver's fault that Marcus May absolutely whiffed on that tackle at the line of scrimmage, and then Murray scrambled for another 5 yards and picked up the first to ice the game away. That's not his fault. Marcus May's got to make that tackle. Just the story of the game. Missed tackles and missed opportunities for this Miami Dolphins defense. All right, the final overreaction here on Monday is, should the Dolphins trade all of their veterans? Forfins. Yep, should. I was holding out hope that this team was going to be able to rattle off some wins. If the Dolphins won this week against Arizona and were 3-4, I would feel good about this team moving forward. Because, yes, you're going to Buffalo next week, but at least you showed up and you won, and Tua's return. You didn't. You lost. You choked. So to that point, I don't care if you rattle off 2 wins in a row. The season's over, man. It is. It really is over. And even the biggest issue with this idea of buying or selling at the deadline is that we'll talk about the trade deadline and when it actually is in just a second, but it's coming up in this next week. You have 1 game until the trade deadline. So even if you win, you're only going to be 3-5 at the deadline. And you don't have any positive thoughts going into the deadline. Like, you're probably trading it. And I don't think anything's going to rise. We talked a lot about this, is that Now the Packers game is in the next 5, but coming into this game against Arizona, your opponents were the Cardinals at home, Bills on the road, Rams on the road, but who knows what that team's going to look like after the deadline. And then 2 games back-to-back on the Raiders and Patriots at home. You should have been able to go 4-1 in that stretch. And I said 4-1 in the stretch is very in play, season's alive. And maybe you rattle off 4 wins, but I don't think that's even on the table. And I don't think you can even think that way if you're a Dolphins fan or a watcher of this team or cover this squad, because we've seen too much of this team to believe it will ever turn around. This team stinks, and it's likely going to have to trade away some of their veterans. And that deadline is November 5th, by the way. That comes the Tuesday after this upcoming game against Buffalo. So you travel to Buffalo, play the Bills on Sunday, have Monday, Tuesday is the deadline. So that is when we will see if the Dolphins ultimately trade away some of their top veterans. And what say you? Be honest with me. Should the Dolphins sell at the trade deadline? Type S for sell or type K for keep. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. And if you have any thoughts about beating the Bills this upcoming Sunday, well, they're thrashing the Seahawks, and they thrashed Seattle in their Week 8 game on the road. So you're probably not going to Buffalo and beating them. But if you thought we were going to give you the idea of trading someone without naming players, you thought wrong, because these are the 5 veterans that I could really see being potentially on the move. Defense will start here. Emmanuel Ogbah, edge. He signed a 1-year deal right before training camp started. Probably could see him move on. He's been okay this season. If teams are looking for pass rushers, they always are. A 6th-round pick could be worthy of Ogbah. I would deal him. You give more playing time than Mohamed Kamara. Maybe let Chop Robinson find his own footing. And Bradley Chubb is coming back in the next 3 or 4 weeks, so hopefully at least he will. So Ogbah could be someone out. Calais Campbell, same story. And I don't want to lose him, but he's on a 1-year deal. So what's the point of keeping Calais Campbell around if his strong play is going to go nowhere? And even though he's really old in a 1-year deal, you could get maybe a 4th-round pick for him, because he has played so well that any contender would love to throw a 4th-round pick to get his versatility on the edge, interior, on their team. He's been unbelievable. He's been the best defensive lineman for Miami this season. So to me, I think Campbell is someone you think about trading. Javon Holland. He's a young player that I really like, but guess what? He's injury prone, and he's a free agent after this year. If you don't think you're going to re-sign him, and you don't think he's worth the $15, $16, $18 million per year, maybe you move off of him and let another team take him on if they need a safety or just want to start building up their young secondary. Last 2 will go quickly. Raheem Mostert. I'm done with Raheem Mostert. I know he had 2 touchdowns yesterday. His yards per carry was not good. I think he had like 7 carries for like 15 yards. He stunk it up. Jalen Wright and Devon Achane are just much more explosive. I'm fine keeping them as a 1-2 back combination moving forward with Jeff Wilson as your veteran. I'm cool moving off Mostert. And Cater Coe is a free agent after this year. Maybe you move on from him in the nickel if a team is looking for a nickel corner. I don't think you get a lot. But maybe you trade Kohu if someone comes asking for him, and you just roll with Cam Smith on the boundary, Jalen Ramsey in the slot for the rest of this game, and see what you got in the second-year man out of South Carolina, because he's yet to get a lot of playing time. Played a lot in this game against the Cardinals. I'll be curious to see the stats and statistics on his day in coverage when those come out later today. But a full fire sell is absolutely good by me. It is. It really is. Like, if they wanted to trade all 5 of those players and just stockpile day 3 draft picks and maybe a day 2 pick if a team gets feisty for Javon Holland, as he's probably the most youngest and valuable player on that list we just showed, sure. But if they traded 4 out of those 5 guys and they got 4 picks spanning from rounds 4 to 7, fine by me. More shots in the chamber to potentially get young talent into this roster next April in 2025, because, boy, this roster needs more talent for sure, and they could get a lot younger as well. Make sure you are subscribed, because we're not going anywhere. Like I said, we'll be dropping a video later tomorrow with more news around this team. Maybe we'll have an update on the Javon Holland injury by this time later today. And we're also going to be live tomorrow as well, and live on Sunday for the game against Buffalo. So we're not going anywhere. Even when this Dolphins stink, we're going to still have you covered. So join the channel and subscribe today.